outsource a program to an organization that they think will be good at handling it. So they think that Catholic Charities are good at the adoption thing, and I don't know if they are actually good at that. I mean, they have, you know, yeah.
Steve.
A couple of comments. Well, first of all, I very much enjoyed the interview. As for the hospitals, it seems to me there's a tremendous number of secular hospitals. I see hospitals all the time that don't say anything about St. Francis or Mount Sinai. So I think we can count most of those on our side.
Yeah, we can count most hospitals. You know, some of the biggest, you know, one of the biggest nonprofit organizations in the world is the Mayo Clinic. That's a nonprofit, that's a secular organization. And like I said earlier, yesterday, most hospitals, I mean hospitals in general, do not, you know, they don't provide religious medicine. They aren't really religious organizations. It's misleading to talk about Catholic hospitals because they aren't Catholic in the way they operate. Except when if you're a woman who's dying and they won't give you an abortion even though you're dying, then that's a Catholic behavior. But in general, the so-called Catholic hospitals, they're only called Catholic because they're affiliated with some sort of Catholic, well, basically a corporation, some giant corporation that owns this hospital, and it calls itself Catholic, and so the hospital ends up being called Catholic, but there's no real connection with religion. So in a way, there's no such thing as a Catholic hospital.
Mm-hmm. And as for the religious people acting out of fear, there's also that they're bribed. I mean, the way to control people is to threaten them and to bribe them. And with religion, it doesn't cost you any money. You can promise them everlasting salvation or everlasting damnation, and it doesn't cost you a dime.
Yeah. Yeah, religion is a wonderful product because you can claim absolutely any benefit for it.
In the area of the hospitals, we have a very serious problem, actually across the United States, with the consolidation of many hospitals that's going on. And when they try to consolidate a Catholic hospital with a secular hospital, they always keep their legacy going. And part of the merger is they must not have family planning services in the combined hospital. And a lot of these have become real problems. For example, in New York City, we had the one down in Greenwich Village was at St. Vincent's, which was known for treating a lot of people with HIV, HIV causing, and they were going bankrupt. So they were trying to merge that hospital with another one, and it so happened it ultimately went out of business, the hospital, because they wanted to make sure that anyone who merged with them would not give family planning services, and so it was out of business. So we're having this all over the country now, where there might be, in some communities, a Catholic hospital and some others, they won't give it up, and they'll have to go out of business otherwise.
Maybe someday there will be a law that says that if you're you can't call yourself a hospital unless you provide, the full range of services. You can't just say, yeah, we'll help you if you're straight, but not if you're gay, and things like that. If you say things like that, then you don't get to be a hospital, and you can't be a nonprofit. You can't, and you can't get federal funding. Right now, you can do crazy things like that and still get federal funding.
Of course, now in Virginia, they're trying to legalize state rape, where women who are seeking abortions must undergo a
The governor today changed that.
He dialed it back somewhat.
He dialed it back. It'll be an external, not an internal.
Oh, it'll be an external rape as opposed to an internal rape.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes it better. Go ahead.
Okay.
You can adjust that mic, by the way.
I
Just good.
don't want to break anything. Hi, my name is Marianne Webb, and I'm new to New York. I've been an atheist for some time. I'm also have a science and a mathematical background. I really enjoyed your talk and the preview that we had beforehand. And most of it I agree with. At least I want it to be so true, because anything kind of that goes against the church's good deeds makes me smile.
Right.
So, I mean, I had a few points personally that make it seem realistic that the church or religious people are seen as more generous. First of all, I think there's a donation of time and money that has to be factored in. But the church, if I'm going to donate, I'm not that generous. I don't wake up and think, oh, I need to donate $50 today. Let me go and find something to donate to. I'm more kind of lazy on that factor, and I wait for somebody to come and ask me for money or some opportunity to arise. And I think if you go to church every day, every week, and then you get mails from your church saying, can we have some money for this product or that project or whatever, just my frequency of donation would increase if my requests for money increased. So I think there's a balance there that could be factored into your discussion. I think also, for me, I do try and donate probably time more than money, and it's really hard to find any affiliation to an organization that's not religious. Most volunteer short-term projects tend to have some religious nature to them. I tend to avoid the overt ones, but they generally have one, so statistics are going to be skewed there too. A couple of things I kind of question you on, and maybe you can just, if not address it today, at least think about it for future talks. One is, and there seemed to be some confusion as to whether we were talking about religious people and their generosity or religious organizations and what they actually do with their money. And they seem to be two completely different arguments. The other thing is, mathematically, a median is the middle value in a set of numbers. So if I have 20 numbers and the first 10 are ones and twos, and the other 10 are several thousands and millions, my median is going to be very small, but my mean average is going to be much more representative. So I was just questioning that 2%. Was it based on the median or the mean and the total?
Chavez refers to that as the median amount given by religious congregations for humanitarian services.
Right, so from my point of view as a mathematician, that would underplay the percentage that you're giving me. So you might be telling me the median amount is 2% of the total money coming in, but it would be maybe 15% of the mean amount kind of thing. So you just have to be really careful about what actual numbers you're using there aren't misrepresenting something unfairly.
There's the...
Can I respond to those questions?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Number one, he did address the volunteer time, ma'am. He did address, Chavez did, and it was very minor. Not only were the dollars low, the volunteer time, if you could dollarize it, whatever you dollar, was very small. So it wasn't thousands and thousands of dollars of volunteer time. It was very. He gave some numbers, so it's not out of proportion for that. I asked him the question about the median and the average, etc. He said it's not too. The spread isn't that far. He said, of course, you get some extreme ones like some large super churches that the numbers may be a little larger. But he said that basically that was a pretty good representation of what it was. So maybe it was $1,200 or $1,300 if you're through the average in, because you could get someone who's just given zillions of dollars, and that would move the average dramatically out. He felt the median.
But it turns out that the amount is quite small. I think I read in Mark Chavez reported that the median expenditure of a single congregation in the United States on humanitarian programs is about $1,300 per year.
Yes, right.
And so half of the congregations spend less than that, and half of them spend more than that. Some do quite a bit of humanitarian work. Most do very, very little. $1,300 is not very much money over a whole year to spend on humanitarian efforts if you're a congregation. So there's
well, can I just interrupt? There's also the misconception about as far as non-believers and specifically atheists. There's a misconception, I think, generally about atheism, as though there was an argument going on that atheism is an absolutist response to the absolutism of religion, which it is not. And so therefore you get questions on the internet, well, why aren't there any atheist hospitals? as though it's atheism is the lack of belief in God. There isn't that. Even though it sounds like we're evading moral responsibility, it just so happens that by definition there is no moral responsibility implied to something that you just simply don't believe. It's not symmetrical. In other words, it's not. And in fact, atheists do give to religious charities because they're unaware of. There are secular charities, and I think they should become more and more known. I mean, I've given to religious charities in the past.
Of most of the religious organizations. So if you had a mega church,
Some kind of symmetrical
for
argument.
example, and they just happened to be doing something, he felt the meeting was a better representation than average in this situation. It's like the expression, the average depth of the river is 3 feet, but you got a spot that's 12 feet, and that could bring the average way up, and people would drown. So we know the difference between median and average, but he's just saying that he thought the median was a better representation about the amount what it would be. Okay,
Just to be precise here, what he said was that the median expenditure was around $1,300 per congregation, and that $1,300 corresponds to about 2% of the average budget. So I think putting those two numbers together is pretty. I think it's fair, and I think it's representative of. And I don't think there's anything misleading about the fact that one's the median and the other's an average. I think that's pretty clear.
He said that major.
I wanted to say something about the effect of there's a very interesting biasing effect in this research that you mentioned in your question. When when you study what makes people donate to charity, the research shows that one of the biggest factors in how much people donate is simply how often they're asked. And so there's an effect there where if you're in a church, you're going to be asked more often. And some people know lots of people in church, or they know lots of people in different kinds of organizations, so they get asked more often. So that means that the people in these organizations, you might think that they've become more generous because they're in these organizations, but in fact they're donating more often simply because they're asked more often.
They know a soft touch when they see one. Gloria.
Gloria Kingsley. I just wanted to thank you for all of the statistical information, which I think would be very helpful in talking to my friends who sometimes won't believe this information if we just talk in generalities. However, there's something that I question, and that is, or I wonder if you don't agree, that most of the hospitals that are called Catholic or Jewish or whatever were originally founded by a Catholic organization or a Jewish organization. I mean, Mount Sinai certainly was founded by Jewish people, and the New York Presbyterian, Cornell Weill, those were founded by these religious groups, and therefore I think that's why, in my opinion, that's why they're called by the religious names.
Okay,
And,
that's fair.
I wouldn't want to, just negate the fact that these hospitals are religious completely.
I still think it's a little misleading to refer to them as religious organizations. You have
Well, we don't. Do you know what their bylaws say? I mean, this is very important. What does the New York Hospital Presbyterian say in its bylaws? What does Mount Sinai say? That is where the fact of whether they're religious or non-religious, and now they're all mostly nonpartisan anyhow. They treat people of every religion or non-religion. They don't ask you.
They treat everyone the same, so they're not religious hospitals.
Well, what is their foundation? What do the bylaws say?
The bylaws say we bring in a whole bunch of money and pay a bunch of doctors to help people.
No, is that?
And then we try not to spend all the money so we don't go out of business.
Whatever it is, I'm sure that if I spoke to a Jewish friend and told her that Mount Sinai was not a Jewish hospital, they would be very offended, and I think personally rightly so.
What about it is Jewish?
Because they were founded by Jewish
But they're not,
people.
but they're not practicing in that realm today.
What about a Catholic
Because they
hospital
don't
with
have to
nuns for
practice-
nurses?
They don't have to practice their religion to say that it was founded by Jewish people. Anyhow, your total overall approach is excellent. Okay,
Thank
I
you.
agree with it.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm sure you and everyone in the audience is familiar with the recent thing that happened with the Susan G. Komen Foundation and how they pulled money from Planned Parenthood. And then I was reading about it recently, and I saw apparently Planned Parenthood saw a huge spike in donations from individuals as a result of that news story. And forgive me if you already covered this, I didn't see the whole video, but have you seen, as someone that reads about these things a lot, have you seen any other incidents like this where something political happens that people don't agree with and then the general public donate to a secular charity as a result, kind of in rebellion?
It sounds familiar. I think I've seen other backlashes like that, but I can't remember the specifics. So it's to me that's more of a political issue. I think of that as politics, and so it's not really part of my study.
Let me just answer part of Gloria's question about the religious holidays. I know specifically many of the reasons that the Jewish hospitals were started was that Jewish doctors had a quota system and they couldn't get into many medical schools. But even worse than that, because I was told that this situation within a couple of months ago, they had no place to do their residency. And what they did is they solved a lot of problems. They opened up Jewish hospitals so these doctors could do their residency. Also, the Jewish patients were complaining. They weren't represented, they didn't get good service in the normal hospitals. Now, outside of New York City, we had a city hospital system. But outside the country, they needed a place to go. So it was a combination. The same thing with the Catholic hospitals. Huh? And the food was terrible, right. And also with the Catholic hospitals, they also felt, that's why they started their parochial schools, they felt that they were second-class citizens and they were treated very poorly by the Protestants, so they tried to start their own hospital system to take care of their own. But that's long over. That's been over for 50 to 100 years. Now they're operating, as we're saying, they're operating, getting government money and getting all the credit. Good.
I just want to.
I think you have to be. Before your question, let me just throw this in. It's easy to lose track of the definitions of the terms when we're talking about religion. Take the idea of a Jewish hospital, and if we ask in what way is it Jewish, and someone can say, well, it was founded by Jews, and that doesn't answer my question. Let's say, so if the Jewish hospital closes on Friday evening and doesn't open until Sunday morning, that would be kind of a Jewish thing, right? But I bet Jewish hospitals aren't like that. And if there are certain attributes of the deity that Jews believe in, for example, vengefulness or something, how would that translate into the services that they provide at the hospital? Is there a connection there?
Also, if people give because they feel obligated or they feel afraid of a dualistic, punishing God. Another point that you made is that religion is a product, and so they're kind of buying a product. Now, my question has to do with, there's churches and there's televangelists. And I saw a televangelist, I can't remember his name, but it was Dr. Ted something. And his pitch, literally, was give me money and you'll get money soon. And that's really,
That's not just him, that's several of them.
well, he said, you know, he had stories like back in January 1967 when I was a young minister with not a pot to piss in, and he had the folksy language and everything. He said, well, I went to a jamboree or something and I gave my last $250, and lo and behold, next week somebody came and gave me $1,000. And he really, and they took credit cards and the whole thing. So he pure greed, nothing else.
Right.
I have nothing to add to that. Pure greed, nothing else.
Sweet Daddy Grace, Reverend Ike, all of these people are using that one.
Are the religious hospitals not-for-profit organizations?
Some are nonprofits. I mean, technically, you know, some are registered as 501c3 corporations, others are not.
And Ken says most hospitals are not-for-profit. Is that-
Yeah, most hospitals, I believe, are not-profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know
There are
that.
a whole group of for-profit hospitals. They're out around this country.
Okay,
The vast
thank you.
majority are nonprofit.
I have a question about the concept of generosity as well, although from a different point of view. You know, I really have a problem with someone saying they're generous because they give to a faith-based organization and they stop someone from having an abortion, or they stop some type of social covenant that we've had for many, many years in this country, or they use their money for politics to defund social services for the poor because it in some way violates their faith when it has nothing to, where faith has no space in the secular aspect. Censorship of books. Okay, you can go into libraries and you'll find faith-based organizations saying that you can't have these databases, you can't have these books. You have this in higher ed, you have this in trying to teach intelligent design, where there's money that's going in, and it's going towards...
Lots of money going there.
Lots of money going there.
Yeah.
And so when you define generally generosity is considered something generous. Okay, but how you define it is very, very dangerous unless you really qualify it in some way, and that's my statement.
Well, we have this really funny thing. We have this really funny system in the United States, which is we have the tax code says that you can give money to something called a nonprofit corporation. And if you give money to them, then your donation is sort of discounted because you can take it off your taxes, and so it's cheaper. You get a discount on that service that you're buying. But not-for-profit, you know, anyone can decide to be a not-for-profit corporation. In fact, churches, I think I didn't mention this yesterday, there's a form 1023 that you file with the IRS if you want to become a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. If I wanted to start a non-profit corporation, I would file a form 1023, I think that's what it is, and there's an exception. There's one kind of organization that doesn't have to file that form to show that it does good things for the community, and that's churches. Churches don't have to file Form 1024. All you do is when you file your taxes, you put "we are a church," and then you get all this. You get all these tax credits, you know, all these benefits from government. In other words, you get subsidies from the rest of the United States. So. It's built into the tax code that that being a not-for-profit organization is a public good, and then specifically being a church is a kind of not-for-profit organization that represents a public good. If you're a church, you are a public good, and that's built into that's baked in to our laws right now. I could send $100 to the Westboro Baptist Church to help them travel around the country and carry signs that say "God hates fags" when they travel around. That would be a tax-deductible contribution.
Yes, no. I just read about that part of the tax code recently myself, that you sort of automatically get your 501c3 status if you're a church without, as opposed to other charitable organizations. I think it's outrageous. I don't think they should have that status anyway, but not why I came up here. I wanted to thank you for your research because I think it's kind of mind-blowing that people had sort of drawn these conclusions that, religious people are so much more generous based on self-reporting studies that are so obviously flawed. I mean, first first the self-reporting, which is obviously, people are gonna lie. And, second, anything scientific has to be empirical, as you pointed out, and there is no way to quantify generosity or religiosity. And I would also point out that maybe some of these people who claim to be religious may very well have been atheists, who live in a community where it was not okay to say that you aren't religious.
Oh, absolutely.
So I would, just put that forth, and thank you for your time.
Sure.
Thank you for your question.
I think I didn't mention one of my favorite studies that I read about in my research. Perry and Crossley. There's a wonderful paper that was published in 1950, where there was at that time there was an organization in Denver, Colorado called the Community Chest. This later became the United Way, but the Community Chest went door to door and they collected donations. And they had kept records of who had donated and who hadn't donated. Now, Perry and Crossley independently did a survey, I think by telephone, I can't remember. And they contacted all these households and they asked people, did you give to the Community Chest during the pledge drive last fall? And they asked, maybe 1,000 people, I can't remember the exact number. And then they took their records and they went down to the Community Chest offices and they checked to see who they could see at the Community Chest. For everyone who said yes on their survey, they had their name and they could go in and see, John Smith says that he donated. Let's see, did John Smith donate? And they found out that 40% of the people who had told them that they gave to the Community Chest a few months earlier had not.